Hey guys. Tonight, we are pushing open a heavy glass door and stepping into the cool, humming brightness of an American supermarket somewhere in the middle of the 1970s. Outside, the parking lot shimmers with late afternoon heat. Inside, the air is a few degrees cooler, faintly sweet, and carrying that particular smell you never quite forget. Waxed floors, ripe cantaloupe, fresh bread from somewhere near the back, and the cold metallic breath of the open freezer cases. Somewhere overhead, a soft instrumental version of a song you almost recognize drifts down from speakers you can never quite locate. Before we settle in, I want to say a real thank you to the viewer who suggested this one. You sent this idea in a while back and it stuck with me, because it is exactly the kind of small, ordinary world that turns out to hold so much. Honestly, the best topics on this channel almost always come from you all. Your comments, your memories, the little details you share about your own lives back then. That is what shapes these videos and keeps this quiet corner of the internet growing. So if you feel like it, and only if you feel like it, a like or a subscribe helps more than you know, and I always love reading where you're watching from down in the comments. And if you would rather drift off with your eyes closed, the channel is now on Spotify too, so you can find it there anytime. Link is in the description. Now, go ahead and get comfortable, really comfortable. Dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft steady hush, pull the blanket up, and let your shoulders come down from around your ears. There is nowhere to be tonight but here. Because I want you to wonder, the way I have been wondering, what a simple trip to the store actually felt like back then. What did a Thursday evening grocery run really feel like in 1973 after supper, with the light going gold outside? What did the store smell like in the very first second the doors opened for you? How did a checkout sound before there was ever such a thing as a beep? What did it feel like to hand your loaded cart to a teenage bag boy and simply follow him out to the car? And what did people talk about, leaning on their carts in the aisle, back when the store was a place you actually saw your neighbours? And just like that, it is 1974. The asphalt in the lot is still warm from the day. A stray cart rattles somewhere off to your left. Your list is folded once and tucked into your palm. The wide glass doors swing open with a soft mechanical sigh, and the cool, bright, humming world of the supermarket reaches out to welcome you in. Let's step inside. Let's start at the very threshold, in that small moment of arrival. You step onto the black rubber mat, and the heavy glass doors part in front of you as if the building itself has decided you are welcome. There is a little thrill in it, even for grown-ups, the sense of being expected. Cool air rolls out to meet the warm evening on your skin, carrying that first wave of the store's smell. Carts are nested in a long silver row just inside, and you tug one free with a clang that echoes off the tile. For a second you simply stand there, taking it in, the brightness, the hush, the whole ordered world of it, before the list in your hand pulls you gently forward. The doors themselves feel like a small marvel, and if you are honest, they never quite stop feeling that way. You remember when doors were only doors, when you pushed them open with your own two hands and held them for whoever came behind. Now they simply know. A rubber pad beneath your feet, a soft mechanical breath somewhere overhead, and the way is clear. Children linger on that mat, stepping off and on, watching the doors obey them, until a mother's hand finds a shoulder and steers them inside. You understand the impulse. There is something quietly wonderful about a building that opens itself to you. Just past the threshold, the temperature changes for good. The heat of the parking lot, the shimmer off the asphalt, the tired weight of the day, all of it stays outside where you left it. In here the air is cool and even and faintly perfumed, and it settles over you like the first sip of something cold. You feel your shoulders come down. You had not noticed they were up, The light is the next thing you notice. It comes from long rows of tubes set into the ceiling, and it is bright. Brighter than any room in your own house. Bright enough that there are no shadows anywhere, no dim corners, nowhere for the evening to hide. Under that light the floor gleams, waxed to a soft shine, and the tile stretches away in every direction toward aisles you cannot yet see the ends of. Everything looks clean. Everything looks ready. It is the kind of brightness that makes a person stand up a little straighter. Your neighbour is here too, you realise, a few carts ahead, and she lifts a hand and you lift yours, and neither of you says much because there will be time for that in the aisles. A man in an apron nods at you on his way past with a mop. Somewhere a child is asking for something and being told gently that they will see. The store is not crowded, not tonight, but it is peopled, and there is a low, pleasant murmur to it, the sound of a place where folks come and go and know one another's faces. You pull your cart free and the wheels chatter over the tile, and you take that first step in, and the list in your hand seems suddenly beside the point. There is no hurry here. That is the strange gift of it. You came for a few things, milk and bread and something for supper, but the store does not rush you toward them. It opens itself and invites you to wander, to look, to run your eyes down the shelves and remember what you had forgotten you needed. The evening outside can wait. In here, for a little while, you belong to the bright, cool, ordered world of the store, and it seems glad to have you. You breathe in once more the sweet, cold smell of it, and let yourself begin. Every trip begins with the cart, and somehow it is always this cart. You have pulled it loose from the row and pushed it 3 feet before you hear it. That one back wheel, spinning sideways, chattering against the floor with every step. You could go back for another. You never do. Instead, you lean your weight a little to one side and steer it like a small stubborn boat, and by the second aisle, you have stopped noticing the sound entirely. The handle is cool chrome under your palms, worn smooth by 1,000 hands before yours. It's a small, imperfect, deeply familiar thing, the kind of companionship we have quietly traded away for smoother wheels and quieter stores. The cart is heavier than it looks, built of real steel, and it rolls with a low rumble that you feel up through your wrists. There is a little folding seat near the handle where a child can ride, legs dangling through the 2 round holes, and if you have one small enough, that is where they sit, facing you, watching your face the whole trip, while the shelves slide by behind them. You talk to them as you go. You point things out. The cart becomes a kind of moving conversation, the 2 of you rolling slowly through the bright aisles together. That wheel, though, it has a mind of its own, and its mind is set on going anywhere but forward. Around a corner it drags and shudders. On a straightaway it hums along almost politely, lulling you, and then catches again just when you have relaxed. You find yourself steering with your hip, with a little push here and a little correction there, the way you might guide a stubborn dog on a leash. It is annoying. It is also, in a way you would never say out loud, a little bit companionable. You watch other folks with their carts and know they have all made the same small piece. There goes a man wrestling one that pulls hard to the left, walking at a slight angle the whole way down the aisle and not seeming to mind. There goes a woman who has clearly drawn a good one, gliding along smooth and silent, and you feel a small honest flicker of envy. Nobody trades their cart in. You have committed. You and this cart are seeing the trip through together, wobble and all. By the time you reach the middle of the store, the cart is filling, and the added weight seems to settle it. The wheel quiets. The rumble deepens. There is a satisfaction in a cart growing heavy, in the way it takes a little more push to get it moving, a little more pull to bring it to a stop. It is proof of a job being done. Every can and box in there is a small decision made, a small square of your list crossed off, and the cart carries the whole story of your errand as you go. You lean into the handle and let your weight do the work, and the cart rolls on, wobble and rumble and all, faithful in its imperfect way. It is such a small thing, and yet it is the sort of small thing that has a way of coming back to you years later, unbidden, complete. The cool chrome, the chatter of that one bad wheel, the feel of a heavy cart moving slow through a bright, quiet store on an ordinary evening. Some things are too plain to seem worth remembering, right up until they are gone, and then you find you remember them best of all. Turn right, and the produce section opens up in front of you like the front room of the store. There is no automatic misting here, no timed spray, no piped-in sound of thunder over the lettuce, just wooden crates and slanted wooden tables, and a boy in an apron working his way down the row with a bunch of radishes in one hand. You pick up a tomato, and it is warm, actually warm, sitting out under the lights. You cup a peach in your palm and press your thumb gently to its shoulder to see if it will give. Everything here asks you to slow down and use your hands in a way the grocery store rarely asks of anyone now. The colours stop you first. After the long bright sameness of the packaged aisles, the produce section is a burst of real colour. The deep red of tomatoes, the waxy green of peppers, the dusty purple of eggplant, the cheerful heaped yellow of corn still in its husk. It looks less like a store and more like a market, like something spilling out of the back of a farmer's truck, and in truth, much of it did not travel far to get here. You know the season by what is piled high and what is scarce. In summer the tables groan. In winter they thin out, and you make do, and the first strawberries of spring feel like a small holiday. You handle everything. That is simply how it is done. You lift a head of lettuce and feel its weight. Peel back an outer leaf to check the heart. You knock a knuckle against a melon and listen, though you could not say exactly what you are listening for, only that your mother did it, and her mother before her, and the sound tells you something your hands agree with. You snap a bean to see if it is fresh. You hold an apple up to the light and turn it, looking for the soft spot, the bruise, the small flaw that sends it back to the pile. The boy in the apron works nearby, and he is not in a hurry either. He missed nothing, because there is no mister. Instead, he moves the older stock to the front and lays the new behind it, turns the good side up, tidies a table that a dozen hands have just unpicked. When you ask him whether the corn came in this morning, he tells you plainly, yes or no, and you trust him, because he has no reason to say otherwise. If a peach is not ready today, he will tell you to wait until Friday. There is an honesty to the exchange that has nothing to do with policy and everything to do with the fact that he stands here every day among the fruit and knows it. You bag what you want in thin paper or nothing at all, and you weigh it yourself on a hanging scale with a trembling needle, sliding the weights along until the arm swings level. It takes a moment. You do not mind the moment. Around you, other folks are doing the same, bent over the tables, sorting and squeezing and holding things to the light. A whole quiet room of people using their hands and their judgment, trusting their own eyes. And that, more than the wooden crates or the warm tomatoes, is what has faded. It is not just the mist machines that came later, the timed spray and the recorded thunder. It is the sense that choosing your food was a thing you did yourself, slowly, by feel, standing among your neighbours in the honest light of an ordinary afternoon. You set the warm peach in your cart, thumbprint soft and ready by tomorrow, and move on, your hands faintly sweet, in no particular hurry at all. Follow the far wall back and you come to the meat counter, a long glass case glowing with neat pink rows on white paper. Behind it stands the butcher, sleeves rolled, a smear of something on his apron, and he looks up and calls you by name before you have said a word. You tell him what you're cooking, not just what you're buying, and he nods and reaches for exactly the cut he thinks you want, and he is usually right. He wraps it in white paper, folds the ends with 2 quick tucks, and marks the price with a grease pencil. It is a small conversation, 30 seconds long, and it is the kind of small conversation that has almost entirely disappeared. He is a fixture, the butcher, as much a part of the store as the doors or the lights. He has stood behind that case for years, and he's watched your family the way a man watches a slow parade, the children growing up in front of him a Sunday roast at a time. He knew you when you were newly married and unsure what to ask for. He taught you, gently, the difference between the cut you wanted and the cut you could afford, and never once made you feel foolish for not knowing. The case in front of him is a small work of order, everything laid out in tidy rows on trays of crushed ice, the chops fanned like a hand of cards, the ground beef mounded soft and bright, the chickens pale and cool. Sprigs of green parsley are tucked here and there to set it all off. Behind him, through a doorway, you can see the real work of the place, the heavy blocks scarred white from years of the knife, the band saw, the hooks, the great sides of meat he breaks down himself in the cool of the back room before the store opens. You lean on the counter and tell him it's a pot roast tonight, company coming, and he considers this the way another man might consider a problem of real weight. He turns to the case, slides the glass, and lifts out a piece, holds it up for you to see, turns it so you can look at the marbling. This one, he says, and something in his certainty settles the whole question. He trims it right there while you watch, quicksure strokes, the fat curling away, and you understand that you're getting not just meat but his judgment, decades of it, thrown in for free. He wraps it the way he always has, laying it on a broad sheet of white paper, folding one side over, then the other, tucking the ends under with 2 practiced motions so the little parcel is snug and square. Then the grease pencil comes out from behind his ear, and he writes the weight and the price on top in his blunt looping hand and slides it across the glass to you and asks after your mother. That is the part you would try to describe, years on, to someone who never knew it. Not the freshness, though it was fresh, and not the price, though it was fair. It was the asking after your mother. It was being known. You could walk into that store on your worst day, tired and short and out of sorts, and the man behind the meat counter would say your name and ask you a kind question and hand you exactly what you needed, and you would leave a little steadier than you came. There is a machine now that wraps meat faster and stamps a price cleaner than any grease pencil ever could. It does not know your name. It has never once asked after your mother, and somewhere in that difference is nearly everything worth remembering about this place. Let's go toward the back corner now, toward the warmth. You've been smelling it since you walked in, that low, sweet promise of bread, and here at last is where it lives. The in-store bakery is not fancy. A few metal racks, a glass case of donuts under a soft light, loaves still faintly warm from the oven behind. Someone slides a tray out and the smell blooms fresh, all over again, yeasty and sugared and impossible to walk past unmoved. You had not planned on the crumb cake. You put the crumb cake in the cart. Some things about a supermarket were designed to be resisted, and were never once resisted by anyone. The warmth is the first thing before you even round the corner. The rest of the store is cool, kept cool on purpose, and then you draw near the bakery and the air changes, grows a few degrees kinder, carries that soft breath of the ovens working somewhere just out of sight. You could find your way here blind, following the smell alone, and children often do, drifting toward it the way a plant leans toward a window. The case is the heart of it. Behind curved glass sit the donuts in their rows, the plain and the sugared and the ones with a bright glaze that catches the light, the jelly ones dusted white, the crullers twisted like little ropes. There are turnovers with fruit leaking dark at the seams, and coffee cakes cut into thick squares, and along the top rack the bread, loaves of it, some sliced and bagged and some whole, their crust still crackling faintly as they cool. A woman in a hairnet works behind the glass, sliding a fresh tray in, easing an empty one out, her movements unhurried and sure. You did not come for any of this. You came for bread, plain bread, the everyday loaf, and you take it, and you should turn away now and you know it. But the tray she just slid out is crumb cake, and the smell of it reaches you. Cinnamon and butter and sugar, and something in you that is older than sense simply decides. You lift a square onto a sheet of tissue and set it in the cart, telling yourself it is for later, for coffee, for the children, for anyone but you. Everyone tells themselves some version of this. Nobody believes it. There is a lesson in the bakery, if you care to see it, about how the store was built to work on you. They put the bakery at the back on purpose, so the smell would greet you at the door and pull you the length of the aisles to reach it, past everything else along the way. They kept the ovens going through the day so the smell never faded. It was, in its quiet way, a kind of gentle persuasion, and yet it is hard to feel wronged by it. There are worse things to be tempted toward than warm bread and cinnamon on an ordinary evening. You wheel away with the crumb cake riding on top of everything, and already you are a little happier than you were a moment ago, though you would be hard-pressed to say why. That is the thing about that smell. It got into more than your appetite. It reached something warmer and further back, a memory of kitchens, of mothers baking, of coming in from the cold to something rising in the oven. The store could not sell you that. Not really. But for the price of a square of crumb cake, it could let you brush up against it for a moment, and that was almost enough. It is time for the cereal aisle now, and if there are children with you, this is where you lose them. The boxes rise on both sides in a wall of colour, cartoon faces grinning down at eye level, each one shouting its promise in bright block letters. But the real negotiation is not about the cereal at all. It is about the prize inside, the little plastic toy or the mail-away offer printed on the back, the thing that decides which box comes home. You reach for the sensible one. A small hand redirects you. It is a gentle, familiar tug of war that has been quietly rewritten, now that the prizes and the wonder have mostly moved to a screen. The aisle is loud without making a sound. Every box is fighting for a child's eye, and the boxes know exactly where a child's eye falls, which is why the brightest and most cartoonish of them sit low, at the height of a 5-year-old, while the plain grown-up flakes ride up top where only you can reach. It is no accident. Somewhere a person was paid to decide precisely how high off the floor a grinning cartoon tiger ought to live, and they decided well, because your child has already stopped walking and is standing transfixed before a wall of sugar and colour. You know what is coming. You have done this dance 100 times. You reach for the box you actually meant to buy, the sensible one, the one that is mostly grain and not mostly sugar, and a small hand closes on your sleeve and tugs you 2 feet down the aisle to the box that matters, the one with the prize. Because that is the whole point for a child. The cereal is almost beside the question. What matters is the small plastic treasure buried somewhere in the flakes, the toy you have to eat your way down to reach, or the offer on the back that promises something grander still if you only mail in a box top and wait the long weeks for it to come. You look at the box your child is holding up with both hands, at the promise printed across it, and you feel the old negotiation begin. Maybe you hold firm and steer back to the sensible one, and there is a small sorrow at your hip the rest of the trip. Maybe you strike a bargain. This box now, the sensible one next time, both of you knowing how that tends to go. Or maybe you are tired, and it is Thursday, and the box does not cost so very much, and you let it ride into the cart to a small triumphant cheer, and honestly it makes your evening a little brighter to have made someone that happy over so little. And it was little. That was the wonder of it. The prize was almost always a disappointment, a flimsy thing of coloured plastic that broke by the weekend or got lost under the couch by Monday. But it was never really about the toy. It was about the wanting and the hoping and the digging your hand deep into the box past the point your mother allowed, and the long ache of waiting for something to arrive in the mail with your own name on it. A child could pour a whole world of anticipation into a cereal box, and the box, cynical and calculated as it was, held that anticipation gladly. You round the end of the aisle with a boxer board, or without it, and either way the moment passes the way these moments do. But you would remember it, long after the toy was broken and the cereal eaten and the child grown and gone. You would remember standing in that bright loud aisle, being tugged gently by the sleeve toward the thing that mattered most in all the world, if only for an afternoon. Let's turn down the frozen aisle, where the air goes suddenly, wonderfully cold. The long chest freezers hum along the floor and you lean over the fogged glass and feel it breathe up at your face. This is the aisle of the future, or what the future felt like then. The boxed dinner on its little foil tray, the whole meal you could heat in the oven while you put your feet up. There is something almost glamorous about it. The picture on the box so much tidier than any dinner ever turned out. You slide the frost aside and lift one out cold and stiff in your hands and feel like you are buying yourself an easier evening. The cold hits you before you reach it. A clean, sharp chill spilling up out of the open cases and pooling in the aisle. On a hot day, you might linger here a little longer than you strictly need to, letting the cold breathe up over your arms, telling yourself you're still deciding. The freezers run the length of the aisle in long, low rows, their glass tops fogged and frosted, and you have to wipe a clear patch with your sleeve to see what waits beneath, the stacked boxes glittering faintly with ice. This was the modern part of the store, the part that felt like it had arrived from somewhere ahead of everyone else. The frozen dinner, the whole supper of it sealed in a foil tray with its neat little compartments, the meat here, the potatoes there, the vegetables and the small square of dessert each in its own tidy well. You slid it in the oven, still frozen, and went and sat down, and some while later it came out hot and ready. No peeling, no chopping, no standing over the stove. It seemed at the time very nearly like magic. The picture on the box promised a great deal. There the dinner sat, glistening and golden, the peas a brilliant green, the gravy pooled just so, everything steaming and perfect. What came out of the oven never quite matched it. The corners a touch too crisp, the middle a touch too cool, the dessert somehow both scalding and frozen at once. But nobody minded much. It was not really the taste you were buying. It was the evening off. It was the picture of a woman with her feet up and her family fed, and if the reality fell a little short of the box, well, the box had still delivered the thing that mattered, which was an easier night. You lift one out, and it is heavy and hard as a brick laced with frost, and you tuck it into the cart among the fresh things, a little island of the future riding alongside the warm bread and the hand-wrapped meat. There is no shame in it. A day is long, and a woman's arms are only two, and the frozen aisle offered something the rest of the store could not, which was time, an hour saved, a supper that cooked itself. It felt, standing there in the cold, clean breath of the freezers, like a small kindness the modern world had invented just for you. It is strange, looking back, how new it all felt, how full of promise. This aisle we now walk without a second glance. The future arrived so quietly, in a foil tray, in a fogged glass case, in the simple radical notion that dinner did not have to be made from scratch every single night of a life. You close the frosted lid, and it seals with a soft sucking breath, and you push on, a little richer in time than you were a moment before. Now let's talk about the bottles, because you did not come empty-handed. Tucked under your arm, or waiting in the trunk, is the wooden crate of empties from last week, the soda bottles and the milk bottles, rinsed and clinking. You carry them to the front and they are taken back, counted and quietly turned into a few cents off your total. Nothing was thrown away. The bottle you drank from will be washed and filled and sold again, and you will bring it back once more. It was not called anything as grand as recycling then. It was simply how things were done, a small ordinary loop of care we have largely forgotten how to close. The crate itself is a familiar weight, wooden and worn, with slots for each bottle so they do not knock together too hard on the ride over. All week it sits by the back door, filling up bottle by bottle as the week goes on. The empties rinsed at the kitchen sink and set to drain and then tucked into their places. By Thursday it is heavy, and you carry it in against your hip, the glass clinking, that particular hollow music that means the crate is full and the week is done. At the front of the store there is a place for them, and a boy or a clerk takes the crate from you and counts the bottles with a quick practised eye, and marks the deposit against your bill. It is only a few cents a bottle, but the few cents were yours to begin with, paid when you bought the drink, held in trust until you brought the glass back, and there is a small satisfaction in reclaiming them, in the tidy fairness of the arrangement. You put the money down, you return the bottle, you get the money back. Nothing wasted on either side, and nothing was wasted either in the deeper sense. The bottle you set on the counter would not be thrown away or crushed or melted down. It would be carried to the back and shipped off and washed and filled again, the same sturdy glass, and set back on a shelf for someone else to buy and drink and return in their turn. A single bottle might make that journey 12 times, 100, passing through 100 kitchens, rinsed at 100 sinks, carried back in 100 crates. It was built to last and meant to travel, and everyone understood their small part in keeping it moving. Nobody thought of it as virtue. That is the thing worth pausing on. There was no word for it grander than the deposit, no sense of doing something noble or saving the world. It was simply thrift, simply sense, simply the way a careful household ran. You would no more throw away a good bottle than you would throw away a good jar or a length of string. Things were kept because keeping them was right, and used again because using them again cost less, and the whole quiet loop turned round and round without anyone thinking to praise it. You set the crate down empty now, lighter by a week's worth of glass, and you will carry it home empty and begin filling it again tomorrow, and next Thursday you will bring it back once more, the way you have done for years and will do for years yet. It is such a plain little habit, and yet there is something in it, that closed and careful loop, the bottle that came back and went out and came back again, that feels quietly wiser than the mountains of things we use once and let go of now, without a crate to bring them home in, without a few cents owed us for their return. Let's walk all the way to the back wall, because that is where they keep the milk, and there is a reason for that. The dairy case runs long and cold, glass doors fogging faintly, and you have to cross the entire store to reach it, past everything else you did not know you needed. The milk is heavy in its bottle or its waxed carton, the cream risen to the top in a pale collar. You check the eggs, opening the carton right there, running a fingertip over each smooth shell to make sure none are cracked. It is a small ritual of trust, performed in the cold at the far end of the store. They put the milk at the back on purpose, and everyone half knew it, though nobody much resented it. Milk was the thing nearly everyone came for, the staple of staples, and so it was placed as far from the door as the building would allow, so that reaching it meant walking the whole length of the store, past the bread and the canned goods and the cereal, and the little tempting displays at the end of every aisle. You went in for milk and came out with a cartful, and the store had arranged it so, gently, without ever saying a word. The case itself is a wall of cold. You feel it before you arrive, the chill spilling out from the long row of glass doors, and when you pull one open, the cold rolls over you, and the glass fogs at once with the warmer air of the aisle. Inside, the milk waits in ranks. in glass bottles with their foil caps or in waxed cardboard cartons with the little peak tops, and the cream has risen in the bottles to sit in a thick pale collar at the neck, which you will pour off or shake in depending on what you mean to make. It is heavy when you lift it, heavier than you expect, a real weight of a thing, and you set it carefully in the cart. Then the eggs, and the small ceremony they require. You do not simply take the carton and go. You open it, right there in the cold, and look. You lift each egg the smallest bit, or run a fingertip along the row, checking for the cracked one, the stuck one, the hairline flaw that means trouble in your pocket by the time you get home. If one is broken, you close the carton and reach for another and check that one too. Everyone does it. There is a whole quiet row of people at the dairy case, cartons open, heads bent, performing this same small, careful inspection, trusting their own eyes rather than any promise printed on the lid. It is a ritual of trust, but trust of an old and practical kind, the sort that trusts by checking. You believed the eggs were good, and you looked anyway, because looking cost you nothing, and a broken egg cost you a nickel and a mess. There was no shame in it, no suggestion that you doubted the store or the farmer. It was simply understood that a careful person checked her eggs, the way she checked her change and knocked on her melons, and the store expected it and made room for it. The cold and the open cartons and the bent heads all part of the ordinary rhythm of the place. You close the carton on 12 good eggs and set it gently atop the soft things, and turn to make the long walk back toward the front, the cart heavier now, the cold of the case still on your hands. Behind you the glass doors are already clearing of their fog. It is the farthest point of the trip, the back wall, the turning place, and there is a small sense of the errand cresting here and beginning, at last, to head for home. It is your turn soon, or it will be, once you take a ticket. Let's stop at the deli, where a small red machine dispenses a curl of paper with a number on it, and a board on the wall tells you how far off your turn still is. So you wait, and you watch the man behind the counter set the slicer humming, laying slice after slice of ham onto waxed paper with a practiced flick of the wrist. He holds one up for you to taste before he wraps the rest, and you take it from his fingers and nod. The waiting is part of it. There is a patience the deli counter asked of you that the modern store has mostly done away with. The little machine is the first thing, mounted at the corner of the case, and you pull the tab and a curl of paper comes free with a number printed on it, and you glance up at the board on the wall to see how your number sits against the one now being served. There are a few ahead of you. That is fine. You have your ticket, your place is held, and there is a small comfort in that, in knowing that the order of things is fixed and fair and no one can slip in front of you no matter how they crowd the glass. So you wait, and waiting here is no hardship because there is plenty to watch. The case in front of you is a long, bright display of it all. The cold cuts fanned in their trays, the pale pink ham and the darker roast beef, the bologna and the salami and the loaf meats, the cheeses in their heavy blocks and wheels, the tubs of potato salad and coleslaw and the olives glistening in their brine. You decide and undecide as you stand there. You had meant only to get ham, but the roast beef looks good today, and the woman ahead of you is getting a half-pound of that Swiss, and now you are thinking about Swiss. The man behind the counter works without hurry and without waste. When your number comes up, he looks to you, and you tell him what you want, and he takes down the great cylinder of ham and sets it against the slicer and thumbs the machine to life. It hums and whirs, and he draws the meat across the blade in a smooth, practiced rhythm, and the slices fall away one after another and drape onto the sheet of waxed paper he has laid ready, each one catching the light for a moment before it settles. He knows just how thin you like it. If he does not, he asks and adjusts and shows you a slice to be sure, and before he wraps it, He does the thing that makes the deli. He lifts a single slice on the tips of his fingers and holds it across the glass to you so you can taste, so you can be certain it is what you wanted before he weighs out the rest. You take it from his hand and try it and nod, and only then does he fold the paper over the little stack and weigh it and mark the price and hand it across. It is a small courtesy that offered taste, but it says something. It says your custom matters, and your satisfaction is his concern, and the two of you are settling this together over the counter like people who know each other. That is the part the modern store has quietly let go of, along with the little paper number and the weight it kept honest. The patience of it, yes, but more than that, the human back and forth, the man who cut it fresh and let you taste it and cared whether you were pleased. You could get your ham faster now, sealed and stacked in a case with no one behind it. But no one would hold a slice across the glass on the tips of their fingers and wait for your nod. You tuck the little parcel into the cart, still faintly cool, and move on. Your number spent, your turn taken, your small transaction of trust complete. Let's move into the dry aisles now, the tall quiet canyons of canned goods. Someone has spent real time here. At the end of the row rises a pyramid of cans stacked chest high, perfectly aligned, a hand-lettered sign propped against it announcing the week's special. You almost do not want to disturb it. You slide a can from the safe middle of a shelf instead, read the label, set it in your cart. The labels are simpler here, plainer, fewer words fighting for your eye. It is a stiller kind of shelf than the ones we push past now, one that asked less of your attention and somehow gave back a little more calm. The pyramid is a small marvel, and you're not the only one who slows to admire it. Someone built this by hand, can by can, laying the base wide and true and then rising course by course toward a single can balanced at the top. The labels all turn the same way, so the whole thing reads as one smooth face of colour. It must have taken the better part of an hour. You can see the care in it, the patience, and there is something almost tender in the thought of a person kneeling on the tile after the store closed, squaring each can just so, which is why nobody wants to be the one to wreck it. You could pull a can straight from the front of the pyramid, and the sign says that is exactly what the special is for. But to do so feels a little like plucking the bottom block from a child's tower, and so you find yourself reaching instead to the ordinary shelf beside it, sliding a can from the safe middle of the row, where its leaving will not be noticed, and letting the pyramid stand. Others do the same. The display sits untouched through half the day, admired and spared, a small monument to somebody's afternoon. The cans themselves are plainer than you might remember. The labels do not shout. There is a picture of what is inside, corn or peaches or soup, painted or printed in honest colours, and the name of it, and the name of the company, and not a great deal more. No long list fighting for the corner of your eye, no starburst promising this and that, no urgent words in urgent type. Just the thing, and the name of the thing, and a price stamped on the lid. You can read a whole shelf of them at a glance, and know exactly what you're looking at. And so the aisle is calm in a way that is hard to name until you have lost it. It does not clamour. It does not work on you the way the cereal aisle works on a child, or the way the bright modern shelves work on everyone now, every package engineered to catch and hold and tug. Here the cans simply wait, rank on quiet rank, and you move among them at your own pace, reading, choosing, setting each one in the cart with a small solid clink. There is room to think. There is room, even, to let the mind wander off the list entirely for a moment, the way it can only wander in a place that is not demanding anything of it. You gather what you need, the tomatoes and the beans and the soup for the week, and the cart grows heavier and steadier with each one. Cans are the ballast of a trip, the weight at the bottom of the bag, the things that will sit in the pantry for months and be there when you want them. There is comfort in laying them in, a sense of a household provisioned. of shelves at home filling up against whatever the weeks might bring. You were raised, perhaps, by people who remembered leaner times, and a full pantry meant something to them, and the meaning came down to you along with the habit. At the end of the row, the pyramid still stands, untouched, catching the light, and you give it one last glance as you turn the corner. Somebody will buy from it eventually, of course, and it will come down can by can as the week goes on, until by Saturday it is only a low, sad remnant, and then nothing at all, cleared away to make room for next week's display and next week's careful hour of somebody stacking. But for now it holds, whole and bright and quietly perfect, and you leave it as you found it, and carry your plain cans on toward the front. Now here is something worth slowing down for. At the register, along with your change, you're handed a little strip of stamps, more of them the more you spent. You take them home, and at the kitchen table, maybe with a child helping, you lick them and press them into the pages of a small paper book. When the book is full, and then the next one, you carry them to a catalogue counter and trade them for something real, a lamp, a toaster, a toy. It was a slow reward, earned a shopping trip at a time, and there was a quiet pleasure in the filling of the book that no instant points balance has ever quite managed to replace. The stamps come off a great roll behind the register, and the cashier tears off your strip and lays it in your hand with your change, and the length of it is a small, quiet measure of the day's shopping, a long strip for a big trip, a short one for a few odds and ends. They are soft green, printed close with their little design, perforated so they tear apart neat, and you tuck them into your purse to carry home, because the filling of the book is not a thing to be done here in the store. It is a thing to be done at the kitchen table, later, at leisure, and so they gather. All week the stamps come in, from this store and that one, and they collect in a drawer or a jar or the corner of the purse, until there is an evening with a little time in it, and you bring out the book. The book is a small paper thing with pages ruled into squares, each square the size of a stamp, and each page wanting a certain number to fill it. You sit down with the stamps and a saucer of water, or more often you simply lick them, and one by one you press them into their squares. The children love this part, if there are children, and it becomes their job as much as yours. There is a knack to it, laying the stamp square in its space, smoothing it flat so it does not wrinkle or lift at the corner, and a child bent over the task with the tip of the tongue showing takes it very seriously indeed. The books fill slowly, a strip at a time, a trip at a time, and you tuck each finished one away and start the next, and over the weeks and the months they add up in the drawer, a small hoard of green pages, a slow savings account of the ordinary shopping. Then comes the day the books are traded, and this is the reward the whole patient business was building toward. You carry your finished books to a special counter, or a catalogue comes in the mail thick with the things the books can buy, and you sit with it the way you might sit with a wish book at Christmas, turning the pages, doing the sums. So many books for a toaster, so many more for a lamp, a clock, a set of tumblers, a toy the children have been circling for a month. You choose, you save toward the choosing. The wanting stretches out over weeks, and the wanting is half the pleasure. That is the part that has no equal now. There are rewards still, points and cards and balances that tick up on a screen somewhere, redeemed with a tap, gone as quick as they came. But there was something in the slowness of the stamps, in the licking and the pressing and the filling of the book at the kitchen table, in the long hopeful weeks of saving toward a lamp that the instant version cannot touch. It made the reward a thing you built with your own hands, a little at a time, and made the ordinary errand feel like it was quietly adding up to something. You slide your fresh strip into your purse and carry it home to the book and the saucer and the waiting squares. another trip's worth pressed toward a wish. Let's back up to earlier in the week, to the kitchen table again, and the scissors. The Sunday paper came thick with them, glossy little rectangles promising a dime here, a nickel there, and you sat and clipped the ones for things you actually bought. They rode to the store in an envelope or the bottom of your purse, and here at the shelf you matched them to the cans, feeling clever, feeling careful. Everyone handed over at the register was a small victory counted out loud. There was an art to it, a homely, patient thriftiness that felt less like a chore and more like a kind of quiet respect for $1. Sunday was the day for it. The paper landed heavy on the step, fat with its sections, and somewhere inside, folded among the news and the funnies and the department store spreads, were the pages of coupons, printed bright and glossy and dotted along their edges with the little dashed lines that said, "Cut here." After the dishes, or before, you spread the pages on the kitchen table and took up the scissors, the good ones from the drawer, and set to work. You did not clip them all. That was the art of it. There was no sense saving a dime on something you would never buy, no matter how the coupon tempted you, and so you clipped with a plan, thinking of the week ahead, of what the household actually used, of the brand you trusted and the sizes you needed. A nickel off the coffee you already drank was money in your pocket. A dime off some strange new thing you would only buy for the dime was no saving at all, and you knew the difference, and you left those on the page. The clipped ones went into their keeping place, an envelope, a little tin, the bottom of the purse, and there they waited for the trip. And here at the store the second half of the art began, the matching. You drew out your coupons and worked down your list, holding each little rectangle up against the shelf, checking the brand, the size, the words in the small print that said which exactly it applied to. When they matched, you felt a small glow of vindication. The plan coming good, the saving made real, and you set the can in the cart with its coupon paper clipped or tucked alongside, ready for the register. At the register, the reckoning came, and it was the sweetest part. The cashier rang your total, and then you handed over your little stack, and she went through them one by one, and the number came down. A dime here, a nickel there, 15 cents on the coffee. It did not amount to a fortune, any single trip, and yet you added it up, and it was real. $1 saved, $1.50, money that had been in the store's pocket and was now staying in yours, all for the price of a Sunday afternoon with the scissors. And it was never only about the money, though the money was the point. It was about the care of it, the sense of a household run with attention, of nothing let slip that might have been saved. It was the same instinct that rinsed the bottles and checked the eggs and stacked the pantry deep. A homely, patient respect for what $1 was worth and how hard it came. You clipped and matched and counted, and in the counting you were keeping faith with something, with thrift, with sense, with the people who raised you to know the price of things. You tuck the spent coupons back in the purse out of habit, the trip a little cheaper than it might have been, and feel, quietly, that you have done well. Now let's stand at the checkout and just listen for a moment. There is no beep here. There is a cashier who knows the prices, or reads the little sticker pressed onto each can and box, and enters them by hand on a machine of heavy keys. The register answers with a bright mechanical ring and a satisfying clatter, and a paper tape unspools with your total climbing on it in faint purple ink. The drawer springs open with a chime. It is a sound with weight to it, deliberate and human, and it is strange to think how completely that ring has been replaced by an electronic tone no one ever remembers fondly. The machine itself is a solid thing, heavy and ornate, more furniture than gadget, with rows of round keys that take a real press to move. The cashier works it by feel, her fingers finding the numbers without her looking, reading the price from the little sticker on each item and punching it in, item after item, a rhythm to it like someone at a piano. There is no scanner to pass a thing across, no glass eye to read a code. The price lives on the item and in her memory, and on the keys beneath her hands, and the register only knows what she tells it. And it answers. That is the thing you would remember, the sound of it answering. Each entry ends with a stroke, and the machine rings out, a bright metallic chime, and the keys clatter back into place, and the little numbers turn over behind the glass window at the top, where you can watch your total climb. There is a paper tape too, unspooling slow from a slot, printing each price in faint purple as it goes, so that a long receipt grows and curls while she works. A record you can check line by line if you care to. Everything the machine does, it does out loud and in the open. The cashier knows her prices, more than you would think. She has rung this store's stock 1,000 times, and the common things she knows cold, the bread and the milk and the eggs, and her fingers move to them before her eye even finds the sticker. When she does not know, she reads it, or she calls out over her shoulder for a price check and someone trots off down an aisle to look, and the line waits, and nobody minds much, because everybody's turn comes and everybody's line has waited before. It is slower than what came after. It is also, in its way, more human, a person and a machine and a customer all plainly working the thing out together. Then the total, rung up with a final flourish, and the drawer springs open with a chime, and she counts your change back into your hand the old way, the way that was taught, starting from the price and counting up to what you gave, so that you can follow every coin and know it comes out right. Here's your $6 and $7 and $8 and $9 and a dime makes 20, and here is your dollar. You hardly have to check. The counting checks itself. It was a small courtesy of arithmetic that counting up, and it has gone the way of the ring and the clatter and the purple tape. It is a strange thing to feel fondness for, the sound of a cash register, and yet you do now that it is gone. The beep that replaced it is efficient and quick and instantly forgotten, a thin electronic note that means nothing and stays with no one. But that old ring had weight. It had ceremony. It marked each thing you bought with a small bright sound, and marked the end of the trip with the chime of the drawer. And if you close your eyes even now you can hear it, the ring and the clatter, the honest mechanical music of a purchase made by human hands. You gather your change and your curling tape and step aside, the register already ringing for the next in line. It is time to be walked out. As the cashier rings you up, a teenage boy in an apron stands at the end of the counter, packing your groceries into brown paper bags with a care that surprises you, cans on the bottom, bread and eggs riding safe on top. And when the last bag is filled, he does not simply hand it over. He wheels your whole cart out through those glass doors and across the warm lot to your car and loads it into the trunk and waves off the coin you try to press on him, or pockets it with a grin. It was a small courtesy, ordinary then, almost unimaginable now. He is maybe 16, this boy, working after school and on Saturdays, and he takes the bagging seriously in the way a young person takes a first job seriously, wanting to do it right. He knows the order of things. The cans go down first, heavy at the bottom where they will not crush anything, and then the boxes stood up along the sides, and the soft things laid over the top, the bread, the eggs in their checked carton, the crumb cake riding last of all where nothing can come down on it. He squares the bags as he fills them so they stand up straight and will not tip on the drive home. You watch him work, and there is something steadying in it, this careful attention to a thing that hardly seems to warrant it. He's not hurrying, though the line is long. He's packing your groceries the way he was taught, the way the store expects, the way that means your eggs arrive home whole and your bread unsquashed, and he does it for every customer the same, the small orders and the large. It is honest work, done with a young person's earnest care, and you find you're a little charmed by him, this boy in his apron minding your loaf of bread. And then he does the thing that seems, from the far side of all these years, almost impossible to believe. He takes hold of the cart himself and wheels it out for you, through the glass doors that open for the both of you, out into the warm evening and across the lot to wherever you've parked. You walk alongside with your purse in your empty hands, and it feels a little like being seen off, a little like a courtesy owed to someone grander than you are. At the car he waits while you open the trunk, and then he loads the bags in, settling them so they will not slide, the heavy ones forward, the soft ones where they will ride easy. When it is done, you fish in your purse for a coin, because that is the custom, a small thanks for the walkout and the loading, and here the boys differ. One will wave it off, a little embarrassed, saying it is no trouble, it is his job, and mean it. Another will take it with a quick grin and a thank you ma'am, and pocket it gladly, saving toward whatever a 16-year-old saves toward. Either way, you feel the small human warmth of the exchange, the coin or the wave, the thanks going both directions across the open trunk in the golden light. Then he takes the empty cart and heads back across the lot, threading it in among the others, off to the next customer and the next careful bagging, and you shut the trunk and stand for a moment in the warm evening before you climb in to drive home. It was nothing, really. The whole business, a boy, and a cart and a walk to the car. And yet it is exactly the kind of nothing that has quietly gone, the small attendant courtesies that once wrapped even the plainest errand in a little dignity. You wheel your own cart now, and load your own trunk, and it is fine, it is perfectly fine, and still some part of you remembers being walked out to the car by a careful boy in an apron, and remembers it kindly. Let's notice something clever down at the register, right at knee level, right at the exact height of a small determined child. The candy rack, bright wrappers, penny sweets, gum in every colour, all of it arranged precisely where little hands can reach and little eyes cannot miss it. You feel the tug on your sleeve before you even see what has been grabbed. Maybe you say no. Maybe, after a long day, you say yes and let the one small chocolate bar ride up the belt with everything else. Whoever designed that rack understood something about tired parents that the checkout aisle has never once forgotten. It is a masterpiece of quiet strategy, that rack, and you have to admire it even as you resent it. Every other temptation in the store is spread out across acres, and a child can be steered around it or hurried past. But here at the register there is nowhere to go. The line holds you still, pinned in place with nothing to do, and there at the exact height of a child's eye and a child's reach waits the candy, arranged so that even the smallest passenger in the cart can survey the whole bright display at leisure and begin immediately to want. The wrappers do the work. They are the brightest colours in the store, reds and golds and blues, foil that catches the fluorescent light, and the names on them are names a child knows from television, from the wanting they have already been taught. There are the chocolate bars and the packs of gum in flavours that turn the tongue, strange colours, and the penny candies in their little boxes, the sour ones and the sweet ones, the ones that fizz and the ones that last. It is all right there, all reachable, all impossible for a small person to ignore. And so the tug comes. You feel it at your sleeve, or you hear the small voice begin, or you simply see the little hand already closed around a chocolate bar with the certainty of possession. The negotiation begins, the oldest one in the store, and how it ends depends on the day. On a good day, an early day, a day with patience left in it, you say no, gently and put the bar back on its hook and weather the small storm that follows, and it passes. A child learns that no is sometimes no, but it is Thursday and it is evening and it has been a long day for the both of you, and the bar does not cost but a few cents, and the small face turned up to yours is so entirely hopeful. And so, sometimes you say yes. You let the one chocolate bar ride up the belt with the milk and the bread and the hand-wrapped meat, and the small storm becomes a small sunrise instead, and honestly it lifts your own tired heart a little to have made someone so happy so cheaply. There is no great harm in it. A child should get a chocolate bar sometimes, for no reason but that they wanted it and you loved them. The rack does not care which way it goes, of course. It was put there by someone who knew that a certain number of times, at a certain hour, a tired parent would simply say yes, and that those yeses would add up chocolate bar by chocolate bar into something worth the shelf space. It was a calculation, cold as arithmetic, made by someone who never had to stand in the line and weather the small storm themselves, and yet you cannot quite hold it against them because the yes it bought from you bought you something too, a small happy face at your hip in the checkout line at the end of a long day. There is a whole education happening at that rack too, though no one calls it that. A child learns standing there, the first hard lessons of wanting and waiting, of asking and sometimes being told no. They learn that the brightest thing is not always the thing you get, that a mother's patience has a bottom to it, that a treat means more for being rare, and a parent learns, or relearns each week, the small daily art of holding a line and knowing when to let it go, of loving a child enough to refuse them and enough sometimes to give in. It is such a small theatre, the space of a few feet at the end of the belt, and yet the same little drama plays out there 100 times a day, parent and child and the bright patient rack between them. You watch it happen at the next lane over, another mother, another small reaching hand, and you feel a flicker of fellow feeling, because you know exactly how it goes and exactly how it feels. You set the chocolate bar on the belt, or you do not, and the line inches forward, and the rack waits, patient and bright, for the next small hand. It has all the time in the world. It was designed to, and whether you won this evening's negotiation or lost it gladly, you carry away from it something more than candy, the memory of a small hand in yours, a small want spoken and answered, one more ordinary Thursday moment that seemed like nothing and was quietly everything. While you wait in line, let your eyes drift to the rack beside you. Magazines and paperbacks, film stars and headlines and puzzle books, all fanned out at arm's length for exactly this moment, this small stretch of waiting with nothing else to do. You pick one up, flip a few pages, feel the slick paper under your thumb. Maybe it comes home with you. This was the only line worth standing in, the one place the store trusted you to be idle for a minute, and it filled that minute with colour. It is a gentler kind of waiting than the one we do now, faces down, thumbs moving. The rack stands right at the belt, at the height of your hand, and it is built for exactly this pause, the little island of empty time between unloading your cart and paying for it. There is nothing to do here, no aisle to browse, no list to consult, just the wait while the folks ahead of you finish up, and the rack knows it and offers itself. The magazines are fanned so their covers show, glossy and bright, and the paperbacks stand in their little slots, and the whole thing is arranged to catch an idle eye and give it somewhere to land. And your eye does land. There are the picture magazines with the film stars on the cover, smiling out from under headlines about their romances and their troubles, and the home magazines full of recipes and rooms, and the ones for men with cars and fish and far-off places. There are the news weeklies, sober and grey beside the rest. There are the puzzle books, the crosswords and the word searches, and the little digests of jokes and stories, and down at the bottom the paperbacks, the mysteries and the romances with their dramatic covers, thick and cheap and promising a week of evenings. So you pick one up just to pass the minute. You flip it open somewhere in the middle, and the paper is slick and cool under your thumb, and there is that particular smell of fresh ink and cheap glossy stock. You read a paragraph. You look at the pictures. The line inches forward and you glance up and back down and read a little more. It is a small stolen pleasure. This idle flipping, standing in line with a magazine you have not paid for and may not pay for, sampling it the way you sample the deli man's ham, and sometimes it comes home. It is not much, a magazine, a paperback, and you have earned a small treat, and you have already caught the thread of an article or the hook of a story, and want to know how it comes out. So it goes up onto the belt with the groceries, an unplanned thing, an impulse the store laid there deliberately and you gave in to gladly, and later that evening you will settle in with it, the crossword or the film star gossip or the mystery, a little unlooked for company for the night. For the store knew what it was doing, laying that rack exactly there. It knew you would be idle and knew idleness wants filling, and knew that a bright cover and a caught thread would send a certain number of magazines up the belt that were never on any list. It was the same quiet strategy as the candy at the child's height and the bakery smell drifting from the back, a small deliberate temptation set precisely where you could not help but meet it. And as with the candy, you cannot quite mind, because the thing it sold you was a genuine small pleasure, a evening's company, a break from your own thoughts. But whether it comes home or goes back in its slot, the thing worth marking is the waiting itself, and what filled it. You stood in that line and let a minute pass, idle, unhurried, your eyes wandering over colour and print, your mind drifting where it liked. There was a smallness to it, a gentleness, a sense of a minute given over to nothing in particular, and none the worse for it. You looked up from the page to smile at the cashier, to nudge the cart forward, to trade a word with the woman behind you. The idleness had room in it for the world. We wait still, of course, in lines that are no shorter, but we fill the minute differently now, heads bent, thumbs moving over small bright screens, each of us alone in our own little glowing world, present in the line only from the neck down. The magazine rack asked less of you and gave you something to look up from, something you could set down the instant your turn came, something that left you still in the room with the people around you rather than somewhere else entirely. You set the magazine back, or you do not, and the belt carries your groceries forward, and your small idle minute comes gently to its end. It was nothing, that minute, a pause at the end of an errand, a glossy cover flipped and set down. And yet it was a kinder way to spend away than most of what came after, and you would not have thought then that a thing so small as how you passed a minute in a checkout line was worth remembering at all. Let's just stop and listen again. To the ceiling this time. There is music up there, soft and stringy and instrumental, a song you knew once, smoothed of all its edges and set to float down over the aisles, at a volume just below noticing. No one is meant to really hear it, and yet it does its quiet work, slowing your step, softening the fluorescent hum, wrapping the whole bright, ordinary errand in something almost like calm. It was engineered, of course, meant to keep you moving and content. But there was a comfort in that anonymous drifting music that today's silent or blaring stores rarely offer anyone. You do not notice it at first, and that is the whole design. It lives just under the threshold of attention, soft enough that you could shop the entire store and never once think about it, and yet it is always there, drifting down from speakers set somewhere in the high ceiling among the lights, filling the air the way a scent fills a room. Only when you stop and listen on purpose, the way you're listening now, do you hear it plainly and realize it has been there all along, keeping you quiet company down every aisle. It is a strange music if you attend to it. Songs you know or half know, tunes that had words once and edges once, sanded now to something smooth and stringy and gentle, all the sharp parts rounded off. A song that was loud on the radio last year comes drifting down here transformed, slowed, softened, the vocal replaced by strings. The whole thing turned into a kind of warm wash of sound that asks nothing of you and disturbs nothing. You could not sing along even if you wished to. It is not made for singing along. It is made for not quite hearing. And it works on you gently without your leave. Your step slows to something near its tempo. Your shoulders, already come down from the cool of the doors, come down a little further. The hard, fluorescent hum, the rattle of carts, the clamour that a big, bright room full of people might otherwise make. All of it is softened and smoothed under the drift of the music, folded into something that feels almost like calm. You linger a little longer than you meant to. You browse a little more easily. That was the point, of course, that lingering, but the calm was real for all that it was engineered. For it was engineered, and everyone half knew it, in the same way they half knew the milk was at the back and the candy at the child's height. Somewhere a person chose this music on purpose, chose it to be soft and slow and pleasant and forgettable, chose it to keep a store full of strangers moving and content and unhurried, and just a little more willing to reach for one more thing. There were whole companies given over to it, to the making of this gentle, unhearable music, and the piping of it into stores and offices and elevators across the country. A vast, quiet industry devoted to the shaping of a mood. You were being handled in the gentlest possible way by a song you could not quite hear, and yet there was a comfort in it that is hard to find now, when the stores have gone either silent, humming and cold, or loud. The day's actual hits blaring bright and sharp with nothing sanded off, jangling at the nerves rather than soothing them. That old drifting ceiling music, for all that it was a trick, wrapped the plain errand in something soft, made the bright room feel a shade more gentle, kept you unknowing company while you shopped. There is a memory folded into it too, for anyone who lived those years, a whole atmosphere summoned back by a few bars of those smoothed and stringy tunes. To hear that kind of music now drifting from some old speaker in some old lobby is to be set down at once in a supermarket aisle on an ordinary afternoon, the cart under your hands, the bright shelves rising around you, the whole lost feeling of the place returning on the sound alone. It got into you deeper than you knew, that music you were never meant to hear, and it waited there quietly for years to bring the whole world back. You listen a moment longer to the strings drifting down, a song you knew once, and then you let it slip back under notice where it belongs, and push on, calmer than you can quite account for. That was its gift, and its trick both, the same thing, the calm it gave, and the calm it used. But standing here in the soft wash of it, the bright room gentled and your steps slowed and your shoulders eased, you find you do not much mind being handled, if this is how it feels. There are harder ways to move through a room than to the sound of a song sounded soft enough to soothe you. Let's think back to the flyer that brought you here in the first place. It came folded in the paper or tucked in the mailbox, the week's specials laid out in cheerful print, and you circled a few and built half your list around them. But sometimes you arrive and the shelf is bare, the specials sold clean through. And so the manager writes you a rain check, a small slip that honours the sale price whenever the item comes back in. Your patience is rewarded rather than punished. There was a fairness stitched into that little piece of paper, a sense that the store meant to keep its word, that feels quietly generous looking back. The flyer was the start of the whole trip, really, before you ever pulled a cart free. It arrived midweek, folded into the newspaper or waiting in the mailbox, a single sheet or a few, printed cheerful and busy with the week's specials, this so many cents off, that at such a price through Saturday only. You spread it on the kitchen table alongside the coupons and read it with a planning eye, and you circled the things worth having at the price, and half your list grew out of those circles. The store was telling you what was cheap this week, and you were listening and building your week's eating around the telling. And so you came, in part, for those specials, and most weeks they were there, stacked high, the sign propped against the pyramid, the price just as the flyer promised. But now and again you arrived to find the shelf swept bare, the special gone, sold clean through by the folks who came before you, and nothing left but the empty space and the tag. It is a small disappointment, the kind that could sour a trip, the feeling of having planned and come and missed out, of the store having dangled a thing and then snatched it away. Except the store had an answer for that, and the answer was the rain check. You went and found someone, the manager or a clerk with the authority, and you told them the special was out, and rather than a shrug you got a small slip of paper. On it they wrote the item and the sale price, and they signed it, and it was a promise that when the thing came back in stock, next week or the week after, you could bring the slip and buy it at the price the flyer had named, even if the sale had long since ended. The store had made an offer, and it meant to honour the offer, come what may. There is something in that little slip worth sitting with. It cost the store something to write it, a sale at last week's price when this week's had returned, and they wrote it anyway, because they had said a thing, and a said thing ought to be kept. Your patience in waiting for the restock was not punished but rewarded. Your having planned around a promise was honoured rather than shrugged off. It was fairness, plain fairness, stitched right into the ordinary running of the place, the assumption on both sides that a word given was a word owed. And it rested, like so much else in that store, on the plain fact of dealing with people who expected to see you again. The store knew you would be back next Thursday, and the Thursday after, for years likely, and it dealt with you accordingly, as a neighbour and a regular, rather than a stranger passing through. A rain check was not just a courtesy, but a small investment in that long acquaintance. A way of saying we would rather keep faith with you and keep you coming than win a few cents by letting you go home disappointed. The fairness was good business, yes, but it was good business of a kind that only makes sense when the same faces come through the doors week upon week. You tuck the rain check into your purse alongside the coupons and the stamps, and you will remember it next week, or you will forget it and find it later and be glad, and either way the store will make it good. It is a small thing, a slip of paper honouring a price, and yet it speaks of a whole way of doing business, one where the store and the shopper dealt with each other as people who expected to meet again and dealt fairly on that account, where a promise printed in a flyer was a promise the store stood behind even at a cost to itself. We are used to something colder now, the price that is the price only while it lasts, the sale that vanishes the instant the stock runs out, the sense that the store owes you nothing beyond the moment you stand at its register. And it is efficient, no doubt, and it is nobody's fault exactly, only the way of larger stores serving strangers in a hurry. But there was a generosity in that little slip, a keeping of faith, that is worth remembering. You gather your circled flyer and your little slip and move on, the missed special not a loss after all, only a pleasure deferred a week and promised. Let's watch the young man working the aisle beside you. He has a cart of cardboard boxes and a little handheld gun that clicks a price sticker onto every single can and jar. one at a time up and down the shelf. Click, peel, press. It is slow, patient, faintly hypnotic work, and it means the price you see is stuck right there on the thing you're holding. No need to hunt for a shelf tag or trust a screen. He nods as you reach past him and keeps clicking. All those thousands of tiny stickers, applied by hand, are a whole vanished kind of labour now, gone the day the barcode arrived. He has his cart of stock pulled up beside him, boxes opened and their flaps folded back, the new cans and jars nested inside waiting to go up. And in his hand is the little gun, a clever thing, loaded with a roll of price stickers and set to whatever the price should be, and he works it with a rhythm that comes only from long repetition. He picks up a can, thumbs the gun against its lid or its shoulder, and the sticker peels and presses in the same motion, and the can goes up onto the shelf and his hand is already reaching for the next. Click, peel, press, click, peel, press. There is something almost hypnotic in it, watching him, the steady rhythm of the thing, the small, crisp sound of the gun repeated down the row. He does not rush, and he does not slow. He has a whole aisle to price and stock, and beyond it another, and he has made his peace with the size of the task by settling into its pace, letting his hands do the knowing while his mind wanders wherever a young man's mind wanders on a long shift. You reach past him for something on the shelf he's already done, and he pauses just enough to let you, and nods, and takes right back up his clicking. And the fruit of all that patient labour is in your hand right now, though you hardly think of it. The price is on the can, not on a tag at the shelf's edge that may or may not match, not in a screen you must trust and cannot see, but stuck right there on the thing itself, pressed on by this young man's hand not an hour ago, plain and legible and yours to read. You know what a thing costs by looking at the thing. When the cashier rings you up, she reads the very sticker you read, and there is no gap between them, no mystery, no code. The price lived on the product, put there by a person, start to finish. It was an enormous amount of work when you stop to reckon it. Every can, every jar, every box in the whole vast store, each one touched by hand and marked one at a time, and then touched again when the price changed. The old sticker peeled and a new one pressed on over or beside it. A store held thousands upon thousands of items, and every single one carried a little sticker somebody had clicked into place. Young men spent whole careers of after-school hours at it, click and peel and press, aisle after aisle, week after week, and thought nothing of it, because that was simply the work. That was how a price got onto a can. It was a first job for a great many boys, this pricing and stocking, one of the ways a young person made their entry into the working world. It taught a certain patience, a certain steadiness, the discipline of a task too large to rush and too plain to make interesting, done anyway, done right, done to the end of the aisle. A boy learned to show up, to keep it a thing, to take a small wage for honest repetitive work, and carried those lessons off into whatever came next. The pricing gun was a small rite of passage, though no one thought to call it one, and then one day it wasn't. The barcode came, the little block of black lines, and the scanner to read it, and the price slipped off the can and into a machine somewhere out of sight, and the pricing gun fell silent, and the patient young men found other work, or none. It happened quietly, the way these changes do, and hardly anyone marked its passing. The store grew faster and cheaper for it, and the shopper barely noticed, and the boys who might once have spent their after-school hours clicking down an aisle did something else instead. But watch him now, this last of them, clicking his way down the aisle, and you are watching a whole kind of labour in its final season, a small human craft of sticker and thumb that the world was about to decide it no longer needed. There is nothing tragic in it, quite, only the ordinary way that work changes and hands are freed for other things, And yet there was a plainness to it, a knowability, the price on the can and the boy who put it there, that we have quietly traded for speed and lost track of. He nods as you pass and keeps on. Click, peel, press. Now it is time to pay, and let's watch how it is done. You could count out cash, and often you do, but just as often you draw out the checkbook, flatten it on the little ledge by the register, and write out the amount by hand in your best careful script, while the line waits patiently behind you. You sign it, tear it along the perforation, and hand it over with your identification. No one sighs. No one is in a hurry in quite the way we are now. There is a slowness to that transaction, a small formal trust between you and the store that our tap-and-go world has quietly stripped away. The checkbook lives in your purse, a slim folder of blue or grey, and you draw it out and open it flat on the little ledge the register provides, worn smooth by all the hands that have steadied their checks upon it. You take up your pen, your own pen, the one that writes the way you like, and you look up at the total glowing behind the glass, and you begin. There is no hurrying this. A check is a document, a small solemn thing, and it wants to be written properly. You fill in the date first, in the corner, and then the name of the store on its line, and then the amount, and the amount is the part that asks for care. You write it once in numbers in the little box, and then again in your own hand across the long line below, the words of it, the dollars spelled out and the cents set over their 100, and then a line drawn firm to the end so no one can add to what you've written. Your script is careful here, more careful than your everyday hand, because this is money, and money is written plainly and honestly or not at all. There is a small arithmetic that runs alongside the writing too, quiet and constant. The sum you carry in your head of what is left in the account. You know it near enough without looking, having balanced the book at the kitchen table not 3 nights ago. The stubs added and subtracted in pencil down the little register that lives in the front of the folder. Every check written is a check recorded, the date and the amount and the name of the store noted on its stub before you tear the check away. So the book always knows itself, so the money is always accounted for. It is bookkeeping of the homeliest kind, and you learned it young, and it has kept you square with the world for years. And behind you the line waits, and here is the thing that strikes you most across all the years. It waits without complaint. No one sighs. No one shifts and checks a watch and lets their breath out slow and pointed. The folks behind you have written their own checks at their own registers 1,000 times and will again, and they know how long it takes, and they grant you the minute the way they would want the minute granted to them. Waiting was simply part of the arrangement, borne by everyone in turn, and it carried none of the low hum of impatience that so much waiting carries now. You sign it at the bottom, your name in the hand you have signed since school, and you tear it free along the little dotted perforation, a soft, clean rip, and you hand it across to the cashier with your identification, because that is how it is done, your name on the check matched to your name on the card. She looks and nods and writes something on the back, and it is finished. The groceries are yours. You have paid with nothing but your word in your hand and a slip of paper that says, in effect, trust me, the money is good, and the store has looked you in the eye and decided that it does. For that is what a check was, underneath the ritual of it, a small formal act of trust running both directions across the counter. You trusted the store to charge you fairly, and the store trusted you to have written a good check, to have the money waiting behind it in a bank across town, to be a person whose word on a slip of paper meant what it said. There was no machine to reach out instantly and verify you, no wire humming off to confirm the funds before the bread left the counter. There was only your careful script and your signature and the store's willingness to take them, and the whole thing rested quietly on the assumption that people were mostly honest and mostly good for it. And mostly they were. which is the part worth sitting with. A whole economy of the everyday ran on this trust. The grocer and the druggist and the man at the hardware store all taking your word in ink and waiting the days it took for the check to make its slow way to the bank and back. Sometimes the trust was broken, of course, a check that bounced, a name that turned out to be no good, and the store learned those names and kept them on a little list by the register and grew warier for a while. But the wariness never quite won. The system only worked at all because most people, most of the time, could be counted on, and the store counted on them, and in the counting affirmed something about the neighbourhood it served. We have traded that away and got speed for it, and the speed is real. A card taps the little machine now, and it is done in a breath. No ledge, no pen, no careful spelling out of the cents, no line of patient neighbours granting you your minute. It is faster, and it asks nothing of anyone, and it trusts no one because it does not need to. The machine reaches out and knows you in an instant, knows your money to the penny, and the whole slow human business of your word and your signature and the store's willingness to take them has been quietly rendered beside the point. And something has gone out of the exchange along with the waiting and the writing, some small human weight, some sense of two parties dealing with each other in good faith over a worn wooden ledge. You tuck the checkbook back into your purse and gather your bags, and the next customer steps up and draws out a checkbook of their own and opens it flat on the ledge and takes up a pen. The line settles into wait, unhurried, and no one sighs. It is slow, this way of paying, slower than anything we would stand for now. But there was a dignity in the slowness, a courtesy, a trust worn smooth by long use, and you carry a little of it with you out into the evening, the memory of having paid for your bread with your own careful hand and your own good name. Let's pause at something new on the shelf, near the end of the decade. Among all the bright familiar labels, there is suddenly a run of stark white packages, plain black lettering, no pictures, no promises, just the word for what is inside: beans, corn, soap. They cost less, noticeably less, and there is a small quiet dignity in reaching for one, a sense of seeing through the show to the thing itself. Some folks were shy about them at first, others proud. It was an honest little revolution on the shelf, that plain white can, and it changed the way people thought about what they were really paying for. They stood out precisely by not trying to. All around them the shelves were a riot of colour, every label bright and busy and calling for your eye, and then here was this stretch of plain white, stark as fresh snow among all the noise, and the plainness itself made you look. No painted picture of the corn, no cheerful brand name worn smooth by years of television, no promise of the best, the finest, the family's favourite. Only a white can or a white box, and on it, in blunt black letters, the single honest word for what was inside: beans, corn, soap, sugar, as plain as a thing could be, and they cost less, and that was the point. And everyone understood it at once. What you were not paying for, the white package quietly told you, was all the rest of it. The picture and the name and the years of advertising and the promise. You were paying for the beans, and the beans alone, and the beans were the same beans as in the bright can beside them, near enough grown in the same fields and cooked the same way and poured into a plainer container to save you the cost of the show. It was, when you thought about it, a kind of honesty made solid, an admission printed right there on the shelf that much of what you usually paid for was not the food at all. It arrived at just the right moment too, which was part of why it took hold. Times were tighter than they had been, prices climbing week on week in a way that made you notice. The same cart costing a little more every Thursday than it had the Thursday before. $1 did not stretch the way it once had, and everyone felt it, and a household ran its sums a little more carefully than it used to. So when the plain white can appeared offering the same beans for less, it was not merely a curiosity. It was a small mercy, a way to hold the line on the grocery bill without going without, and folks who might have passed it by in easier years reached for it now with something like relief. Folks came to them differently all the same. Some were shy of the white cans at first, a little embarrassed to be seen reaching for them, as though the plainness said something about their means they would rather not say out loud, and they slipped one into the cart beneath the other things where it would not show. Others took to them with a kind of pride, a canny satisfaction, holding one up and declaring that they were nobody's fool, that they knew corn was corn and would not pay a nickel more for a pretty picture of it. The white can drew a small, quiet line down the aisle between those who bought the show and those who saw through it, and folks stood on one side or the other according to their nature and their week, and there were quiet experiments, kitchen by kitchen, to settle the question for themselves. A woman would buy the plain green beans one week, alongside the branded ones, and serve them without saying which was which, and watch to see if anyone at the table noticed, and mostly no one did. The soap washed the dishes just the same, the sugar sweetened the coffee just the same. Here and there a thing disappointed, a plainer coffee that tasted thinner, a canned fruit packed in a lighter syrup, and you learned those and went back to the brand for them. But for most of the plain white shelf, the test came out the same. It was the same, or near enough that the difference cost more than it was worth. You reach for one yourself, turning it in your hand, this plain white can with its single word, and there is something in it you find you rather like. It does not flatter you. It does not pretend. It makes no promise it cannot keep, because it makes no promise at all, only states, flatly, what it is, and lets you decide. In a store built at every turn to work upon you, the pyramid and the ceiling music and the candy at the child's height and the bright wrappers calling from every shelf, here at last was a thing that simply sat and told the truth, and cost you less for the telling. It was a small revolution, and an honest one, and it changed something in how people thought about the whole bright business of the shelves. Once you had held the plain white can and understood what its plainness meant, you could not quite unsee the show in all the others, the pictures and the promises and the price of them. You began to weigh things you had never weighed, to ask, standing before 2 cans of the same corn, what exactly the extra nickel bought you, and to answer sometimes that it bought you very little you could taste. The white can taught a small, hard lesson in what a label was worth, and the lesson stuck. You still bought the bright cans most of the time for the name you trusted, or the taste you knew, or simply because they were what your mother bought. But you knew now what you were paying for when you did, and the knowing was its own small kind of freedom. You set the white can in the cart in plain view and move on, a few cents richer and a little wiser about the difference between a thing and the picture of a thing. Let's find the man in the tie, the one moving through the store like it is an extension of his own home, because in a way it is. The manager knows every aisle, every employee's name, every regular's face. He straightens a display as he passes, answers a question about the sale, walks a lost child to the front to wait by the office. If something is wrong, you can find him, an actual person, standing right there in the store, ready to make it right. That kind of visible, answerable authority, a single human being who owned the whole experience, is something the enormous stores of today have mostly managed to hide away. You know him on sight, and so does everyone who shops here regular. He is the one in the tie and the short-sleeved shirt, no apron, moving through the store with a different air than the boys who stock and bag, an air of ownership, of the place being his to mind. He does not hurry exactly, but he is always in motion, up this aisle and down that one, his eye everywhere at once, taking the whole store in the way a good host takes in a room full of guests. Nothing much escapes him. He sees the display gone crooked and squares it in passing. He sees the spill before it is reported and sends a boy with a mop. He knows the store the way you know your own kitchen by heart, without thinking. Ask him where a thing is, and he does not have to consider. The answer comes at once, the aisle, and the side and the height of the shelf, because he set the store himself or oversaw its setting, and carries the whole map of it in his head. He knows his people too, everyone. The checkers and the baggers and the butcher and the boy on the pricing gun, knows their names and their shifts and which of them is reliable and which wants watching, and they know he knows, and it keeps the whole place running true. He arrives before the doors open and stays after they close, and that too is part of what the tie means. In the grey early quiet, he walks the aisles alone, checking that the night stocking was done right, that the produce came in fresh, that the specials are up, and the signs are lettered and the floors are clean, so that when the doors part for the first customer the store is ready, whole, presentable, a thing he can stand behind. And at night, long after you've driven home, he is the last one there, counting the drawers, locking the office, walking the darkened aisles one final time, killing the lights aisle by aisle until the great bright room goes dim. The store is his first thought in the morning and his last at night, and it shows in every square display. And he knows the regulars, the faces that come through week after week, and he greets them and remembers a thing or two about them, and it is part of what makes the store feel less like a business and more like a place you belong to. He walks a lost child up to the front and sets them by the office to wait, calm and kind, and puts out word for the mother over the store and stays with the little one until she comes. He does the small human things that a place needs someone to do, the things no policy quite covers, and he does them because the store is his to see to, and he takes these seeing to seriously. There is a kindness in him too that the tie does not quite explain, a discretion learned from years of standing at the centre of a neighbourhood's daily coming and going. He knows which families are having a hard season, whose husband is out of work, whose account has run a little behind, and he carries that knowledge lightly and never lets it show. A word to the checker to let a small thing slide, a quiet extension of credit to a good family caught short, a bag of the day-old bread pressed on someone who could use it, offered so easily it cost them no pride to take. He does not make a show of any of it. It is simply part of running a store that is also somehow part of a community, and he understands the difference between the two better than anyone. But the heart of it, the thing you feel most when you remember him, is that he was there, and he was findable, and he was answerable. If something went wrong, a price rung up higher than the sign, a rude word from a clerk, a thing spoiled that ought not to have been sold, you did not have to write a letter into the void or wait on a line to speak to no one in particular. You asked for the manager, and someone fetched him, and here he came, an actual person, and he stood in front of you and listened and made it right, then and there, with his own authority, because the authority was his to use. That is what has gone, more than the tie or the short-sleeved shirt in the enormous stores that came after. There is a manager still somewhere, but he is harder to find, tucked away in an office behind a door, or spread so thin over so vast a floor that you might shop for an hour and never see him. And the person you can reach when something goes wrong is often someone with no power to set it right, only to apologise and refer you elsewhere. The authority has been broken up and carried off out of sight, divided among head offices and regions and policies, written far away by people who have never once stood in this store or learned a single regular's name. But in that store, in that decade, it stood in the aisles in a short-sleeved shirt, visible and answerable and human, and if you needed it, you had only to ask. You catch his eye as he passes and he nods and asks after your week and moves on, minding his store, and you feel, obscurely, looked after. Let's step back outside now, into the warm evening, groceries loaded and cart returned. The lot is full of long, low station wagons with wood panelling on the sides, tailgates dropped, families loading bags into the way back while children sprawl across the seats. The light is going golden and soft. Someone waves across the rows to a neighbour also just finishing up. There is an unhurried sociability to it, this shared ordinary chore performed at the same hour by the same faces week after week. The parking lot was its own small commons, a place you were briefly, genuinely, part of a neighbourhood. The heat of the day has softened now, the asphalt giving back its warmth gently rather than beating it up at you, and the evening has that particular kindness the end of a summer day can have, the light gone long and golden and forgiving. The lot stretches out under it, filled with the long, low shapes of the family cars of the era, the great station wagons especially, stretched out like boats, some with the wood panelling running down their sides, real or painted to look it, their tailgates dropped open to take the week's groceries into the wide flat way back. There is a whole small choreography to the loading, repeated up and down the rows. A father drops the tailgate and swings the bags in, ordering them so they will not slide on the corners. A mother settles the eggs and the bread up on the seat where they will ride safe, and the children, freed from the store at last, sprawl across the great bench seats, or clamber into the way back among the bags, wrestling and laughing and being told to settle, their voices carrying thin and bright across the warm evening lot. Nobody is buckled into much of anything. The children roam the inside of the car like it is a small room, and the car swallows them and their week's food together and prepares to carry the whole cargo home. The cars themselves have a warmth to them in the memory that the sleek, quiet machines of now have never quite managed. They're big and soft-riding and a little worn, the vinyl seats hot from the day and sticking faintly to the backs of small bare legs, the whole cabin holding the smell of them, warm plastic and spilled something, and the sweetness of the groceries beginning to fill it up. A car was a place a family lived a good part of its life, roomy enough for all of them, and the dog besides, and loading the week's food into the back of it was a homely act, a provisioning of the vessel that carried you all through your days. And here is the thing that makes the lot more than a lot. You are not strangers, most of you. You shop at the same hour, on the same evening, week after week, and so the faces around you are faces you know. The neighbour 2 streets over, the woman from church, the man whose boy plays with your boy. Someone waves across the rows and you wave back. Someone stops their loading to call a word to you about the weather, the price of the coffee this week, the thing that is going around the neighbourhood. The chore of the groceries becomes, in the lot, a small unhurried occasion of seeing and being seen, of belonging to a place and its people. The talk drifts easy and goes nowhere in particular, and that is its whole virtue. A remark on the heat, a question after someone's mother who has been poorly, a bit of news passed along, whose girl is getting married, whose store is closing, what the school is doing come fall. None of it is business, none of it needs settling. It is only the low, steady exchange of a neighbourhood keeping up with itself, the small talk that is not small at all, but the very thread the fabric is woven from, passed back and forth across the warm rows of cars at the end of an ordinary week. You carry a piece of it home with you, and give a piece of yours in return, and everyone is a little more knit together for it. It was a commons, that lot, though no one would have called it so. It was common ground in the plainer sense, a place where the households of a neighbourhood came together, not for any grand purpose, only to do the same ordinary necessary thing at the same ordinary hour, and in the doing to brush up against one another, to nod and wave and pass a word, to be reminded that you lived among people and not merely near them. The store gathered you, and the lot held you a moment longer on your way out, and the seeing of familiar faces stitched you, week by week, a little more firmly into the fabric of where you lived. It is worth marking how much of that has quietly thinned, not through any single loss, but through 1,000 small changes. The store's grown vast and drawing from everywhere, so the faces are strangers now, the hours spread across all the day and week, so no one shops at the same time as anyone, the cars sealed and quiet and hurried straight home. You can do a week's shopping now and exchange a word with no one, and drive home having been nowhere that held you, and think nothing of it, because that is simply how it is. But it was not always how it was. There was a time the errand set you down, briefly, in the middle of your neighbours. You settle the last bag and shut the tailgate, and stand a moment in the golden light before you climb in, taking in the warm evening and the loading families and the children's voices and the neighbours' parting wave. It was nothing, an evening in a grocery lot. And it was also, quietly, a great deal. The sort of ordinary belonging that a neighbourhood is built from, and that is so easy not to notice until you find yourself, years on, loading your own trunk alone in a vast lot full of strangers, and remembering. You climb in among your own sprawling children and your week's food, and pull out slow into the golden evening, one car among the many all heading home at the same kind hour. And let's end where the trip ends, back at your own kitchen. The bags are set on the counter, paper crackling, and one by one you put things away. The cold things first, the warm bread last. The house settles around you. Somewhere the fan is turning, somewhere a screen door taps shut. The errand is done, and it was only an errand, only groceries, and yet it held so much. The butcher's greeting, the bag boy's wave, the stamps in the book, the music on the ceiling. It is the kind of ordinary evening that felt like nothing at all while you were living it, and like something quietly precious the moment it was gone. You carry the bags in from the car 2 at a time, the paper warm and crackling against you, and set them along the counter, and then you begin the last small ritual of the trip, the putting away. There is an order to it, learned so long ago you no longer think it. The cold things first, always, the milk carried to the icebox before it can take a chill off the evening, the frozen dinner slid into the freezer still hard, the meat and the eggs and the deli parcels settled onto their cold shelves, then the cans and the boxes to the pantry, stacked in among what was already there, the shelves filling comfortably up, and the warm bread last of all, and the crumb cake, set out on the counter where they will be reached for tonight. The house is quiet around you as you work, that particular quiet of a home in the evening, the day's business done. Somewhere a fan is turning, stirring the warm air, its low, steady hum the only sound in the room, besides the crackle of the emptying bags and the soft clap of the pantry door. Out the window the light is nearly gone now, gone violet and then grey, and down the block a screen door taps shut, and a car passes, and a child is called in from somewhere for the night. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary evening, settling over the neighbourhood like a blanket drawn up. You fold the empty bags flat and tuck them in the drawer where the bags are kept, because a paper bag is a useful thing and not to be thrown away, and you wipe the counter, and the trip is done. It was only an errand. You would not have called it anything more, that evening, living it. It was only the groceries, the same as last Thursday and the same as next. A thing to be got through and crossed off, hardly worth a thought. You were tired, likely, and thinking of supper, and of the 100 other small things a day is made of, and the trip to the store was simply one of them, done now, behind you, forgotten almost before it was over. And yet look at all it held. This errand you thought was nothing. The doors that opened for you and the cool, sweet air behind them. The butcher who called you by name and asked after your mother. The boy who wheeled your cart to the car in the golden light and waved off your coin. The stamps carried home to be pressed into the book. The coupons clipped on Sunday. The neighbours wave across the rows. The music drifting down from the ceiling, and the plain white can that told the truth, and the manager in his tie minding the whole small world of the place. So much care, so much courtesy, so much quiet belonging, all folded into a trip you took for granted and would have sworn was nothing at all. For that was the true nature of the place, though no one thought to name it so. The supermarket sold you groceries, yes, but folded in around the groceries, given away for free with every ordinary trip, was a whole web of small human contact that a person needs and hardly knows they need. The greeting and the asking after, the being recognised on sight, the dozen tiny exchanges with butcher and bagger and checker and neighbour that, added up across a week and a year and a life, came to something no shelf could stock and no register could ring. You went for the milk and the bread. You came home without ever noticing a little more woven into the world. That is the way of these things, of course. The ordinary days do not announce themselves. They do not tell you, as you live them, that they are the very texture of a life, that you will reach back for them one day across all the years and find them shining. They only ask to be got through, and you get through them, a Thursday at a time, and it is only later, much later, when the store is changed past knowing and the butcher long gone and the stamps a thing you have to explain to the young, that you understand what you had. Not the groceries, the world around the groceries, the being known, the being looked after, the being part of a place. And there is no use grieving it, not really, for the world moves as it moves, and much of what came after is easier and cheaper and quicker, and the young who never knew the other way do not miss it and cannot be asked to. But there is use in remembering, in setting it down gently in the mind the way you set the bread down on the counter, so that it is not lost entirely, so that someone knows it was once like this, that a trip to the store was once a small passage through a place that held you. Remembering is its own quiet form of keeping faith, with the butcher and the bagger, and the man in the tie, with all the ordinary kind people who made an ordinary errand something more. So you stand a moment in your quiet kitchen with the bread on the counter, and the fan turning, and the evening gone soft and grey outside, and you let yourself feel it. The plain sweetness of an ordinary night, a trip to the store, a house provisioned, a family soon to be fed. It was nothing. It was everything. It was only a Thursday in the middle of a life, and it was precious past telling, and you did not know it then, and you can know it now, and there is a kind of grace in the knowing. The bread waits on the counter, the household still around you, and the day, gently, is done. And so we come to the end of the aisle, and to the end of our evening together. We have walked the whole of it now, from the cool, sweet air behind the opening doors to the last warm loaf set down on the counter. We have leaned on a wobbly cart and pressed a thumb to a warm peach and heard the register ring instead of beep. We have been called by name at the meat counter and walked out to the car by a careful boy in an apron and stood in the golden lot passing a word with a neighbour we knew. It was only a trip to the store. It was so much more than that. Honour them tonight, the ones who lived it. The mothers with their lists and their coupon envelopes, the butchers who asked after your family, the men in their ties who stayed after the doors were locked to walk the darkened aisles one last time. They did not think they were living in a golden age. They were simply going quietly about the ordinary work of feeding the people they loved, and doing it with a care that we can still feel all these years later. And maybe that is the thing to carry forward, into your own week, your own errand. Not to bring the old world back, for it is gone, but to slow down just a little, to notice the person at the counter, to let a small moment be what it is before it slips away, So tonight, as you settle in and let your eyes grow heavy, carry the quiet of that store with you, the soft music from the ceiling, the people who knew your name. Rest now. You are provisioned, you are safe, and the day is gently done. Good night.